no interest.
It seems
whatnot.
Well, and I
do
told you,
want to
I
run.
watch people running those things. No one looks happy. No one looks like they're having a good time. They look miserable. Like they'd just as soon come over, stand by me, have a donut.
Okay,
call it
I've got a
day.
theory on why that is.
Why is that?
Because most people, when they run a marathon, the furthest they've ever run in their lives, because they follow marathon training,
Is 20 miles.
is 20 or 22 miles. Because in the theory of like you really want your race to be the success moment, because then the
Right.
people are going to carry you along and they're going to cheer you on.
Yeah.
And then you have done something in front of those people you've never done before in your life, and you will feel great. I'm not interested in that. It's partly why I didn't want to run a marathon. Like that idea of like a bucket list and having this thing that I've now completed that I really, didn't really want to do, but finally got myself to do it. None of that was interesting to me.
Sure.
I got into running accidentally.
Typical narrative around running was you weren't buying into that.
Not interested
That's
at all.
really weird.
I don't want the alone experience.
Sure.
I don't want the runner's high. I've never wanted any of that stuff.
Right.
And I haven't experienced any of that.
Yeah.
What happened to me, and I think it plays out to what happens to, I think it should play out in our religious conversation as well.
here
So
we
let me just steal this
Yeah,
away for a
please,
second.
go right ahead.
I think that it has great correlation to the way we should think about religion and spirituality, in fact. What happened to me was I ran and I realized, hey, that's not so bad. That was pretty good. I sort of enjoyed that. That didn't hurt so much.
I'm not dead.
And then I'm not dead. And because I had in my mind that running was the most efficient way for you to train yourself. It was it's the most efficient way to get your body to do something that your body doesn't want to do. Right? It's the best way to have your mind overcome your body.
Right.
This was the narrative. How do
Break
you
out of all the badness that's in you.
How can your spirit rise above and be more than what your body that's holding you back wants you to do? And I've never liked that narrative. I've never thought that we should look at our human bodies as the problem. I think we should see ourselves as whole human beings, and that we shouldn't be fighting against our bodies like this. Like normally when you're fighting against your body, it's because you're trying to save your body, not because you're trying to break it. So I've never liked that narrative about running. Then I listened to this book and read this book after I sort of got into running called Born to Run. And the suggestion of this fella in this book called Born to Run is from the title, and it's not from that great album. It's the suggestion that the human anatomy is designed to run, that human beings evolved as runners, that if you look at human beings in their typology of all the mammals, we are running animals. Human beings are made, born, evolved to run. Now, I had never heard that in my life. In fact, what I had heard my whole life is that running's bad for you, and that if you do it too much, you're going to break yourself, because runners get hurt all the time. And this person who writes this book, he starts with that too. He's at the doctor trying to figure out why he's getting hurt while he's running.
Yeah.
And they're all like, well, you got to quit running. That's why.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't think so. So anyway, the suggestion is that there's anthropologists who are now telling the story of the human development, that human beings developed as runners. And a lot of people have said this. That's why we're upright. That's why we can run. But people have always said in the last 50 years, 100 years of anthropology, well, we evolved running away from predators. So we just survived by getting away.
Yeah.
Well, that's nonsense. We couldn't have survived as predators.
Right, we can't really outrun the puma.
Because what human beings don't do is when they don't run fastest.
Right.
What human beings can do greater than any other animal is run the furthest.
Really?
What human beings' capacity to do when they run is to run farther than any other animal. Human beings can run for hours. No other animal that runs can breathe at a different rate than its pace, than its steps.
Interesting.
Human beings can breathe at a very high heart rate and keep their legs going. So the way that they now believe, people who study anthropology believe that human beings developed before we had spears but were clearly eating animal protein, was that we ran animals to death. In 4 hours, 4 people can run down an antelope.
4 hours.
The same amount of time that it takes you to run a
at
marathon.
that.
Well, one marathon story is that a guy ran, I think, from Athens to Marathon to deliver the news, then dropped dead. Story being, run 26 miles and you'll die. Anthropologists say, no. Be able to run for 4 hours and you get food. Human beings developed as runners because the antelope just gets exhausted and dies.
Right. My dog, when I was growing up, killed some turkeys like that. Just ran them to death.
Just ran them to death.
Yeah, never had a mark on them.
And their little hearts finally wear out. So human beings would run them off of cliffs, and they would just run them into exhaustion.
Right.
Human beings are born run. Once I got the notion in my head that as a human body, I am born to run, designed, evolved,
Right. Like, so every step
developed
you
as a
take, you're
runner?
becoming more human, not less human.
That I'm finding rhythm in what my body was created to do. So then the question becomes, well, why do people get hurt when they run?
Yeah.
So what patterns do we have in our lives that don't allow us to fulfill that which we were created to do? Born to run. And over time of 5,000, 10,000 years of human history, we start to develop some bad patterns and habits that some might even affect our genetics that keep us from being good runners. So then we have to take in a change in our patterns so that we could be better at doing what we were designed to do. Now, some people argue, a little caveat, with my hands, I'm doing a little caveat, a little parentheses.
I'll do it over here because I
There
have
are,
the camera.
there are some people who would say, well, maybe in the time since, a million years ago, 10,000 years ago, we've lost the capacity to run.
Sure.
I don't believe that that's true.
Oh.
Here's where I think that correlation connects to spirituality, and especially around Lent, because I think about this a lot with Lent. I don't like the whole notion that to be spiritual people, what we really need to do is to get out of our bodies. Ignore your bodies, punish your bodies, withhold. That whole narrative, I think we should think about ourselves that we are we are created, if you like that language. We've evolved, if you're better with that. We've developed. We are human beings with all the capacity to live as spiritual beings and physical beings fully and completely simultaneously without requiring an upgrade.
Okay, but I hear you. But don't you think that obviously there's a level of discipline involved in getting yourself from the person who sits on the couch to the person who is doing what they were made to do.
Yes, and the difference between someone who says, well, then what are the things that I should do to run so that I can fulfill the capacity that I have? I have a capacity to run, but I have these limitations, like I have a piriforma pain in my buttocks, right, that hurts. Or some people get sore knees, and they're like, why am I getting sore knees? What do I need to do to be able to fulfill that capacity without being injured? So I need to I need to engage in a different set of practices.
Right.
Perhaps spiritually, people are engaged in habits or life that they should stop doing, and some things they should start doing so that their spirit and physicality could find agreement. Nothing
Don't you
wrong
think
with
that's
that.
what Lent is about?
No,
for
I don't.
people?
I think that for most people, what their experience of Lent is there is an ideal that you should overcome your physicality in order to achieve.
Okay.
And you should become less human so that you could become more spiritual.
I see. So that your body becomes an obstacle, or your humanness becomes an obstacle.
Yes.
See, I guess there are people who see it that way. I tend to think of Lent the other way. That Lent is an intentional time of practicing something new. Of saying, my stride is off.
Yes.
I need different shoes.
Yeah.
I'm running with my feet turned in. I need to work on this, or my pace is off, or whatever. So I see it as a time of correcting your stride.
Sure.
And
I think for people for whom their approach to any of the spiritual practices is, I am equipped to do this.
Right.
As opposed to, I need to overcome myself in order to do this.
Right. Those are two very different
I think
views.
it's really different. I think it's slightly different. So that's what I've been influenced by in this running thing, is the notion that, hey, I'm not doing something bad for me in order to
or
build,
in spite of your body.
In spite of myself.
Yeah, you're not doing it in spite of your shortcomings. It's your body itself. You're bringing it into its, realizing its capacity and its fullness.
And I'll tell you what, the thing that's probably true in spirituality and religion as well, it certainly is true in the exercise and running world, is the story you tell yourself has everything to do with how you're going to engage in your physicality.
Right. Because when you fail, or when it doesn't go well, if you don't run as far as you wanted to run, there's a difference between saying, well, it's because I'm a terrible runner, or I just can't do it, or I don't have the capacity, or whatever. That's a different story than to say, my machine is not there yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I should probably stop doing this because it didn't go well. Like, imagine doing that with language, right?
Right.
I misspoke a sentence. I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop speaking because I know people who get that way, right? I don't talk in front of groups because I don't want to embarrass. But no, what we do, speech, language is a human capacity. What you do is you do it more so that you get better at it. That's why you practice
Right.
it. So you should practice spirituality or running because you're able to do it.
Yeah.
That's why you practice it, because it's natural for you to do.
Well, and I think then too, if you think of it in that pain sense, that the pain is useful. It tells you something's off.
That's right.
And so now I know I got to fix something.
I should fix that because it shouldn't hurt.
Not go stop running.
Love shouldn't hurt. Doug Pagitt Radio on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, DougPagittRadio.com.